And Minister, you're very welcome to the House. Can I say at the outset, Minister, I don't propose to address the sections of the bill that deal with the Stardust inquests in circumstances where I am involved in those inquests in legal capacity, so I'm just going to leave that alone. But broadly speaking, on behalf of the Fine Gael Group, I'd like to welcome the bill. I think there are there are clearly throughout the bill very important provisions, but I wonder if I could speak particularly about the provisions relating to Ukraine and Ireland's response to Ukraine. I've said in this House before, I'm tremendously proud of how we have, as a country, as a government, yes, but also as a society, have responded to the crisis that has been thrust upon the Ukrainian people and welcomed those who have made their way to Ireland into our societies and into our communities. And I think that reflects very well on Ireland. Speaking to Ukrainian MPs, including the 4 who visited this House not very long ago, they are astonished at the flexibility of our government in dealing, for example, with the immigration issue. And I suppose from a justice perspective, the ability of the government to react to that crisis, to remove immigration restrictions on Ukrainian citizens coming to Ireland, I think was not just a function of how we have a smaller government than many of our European neighbours, but also I would like to think a function of the compassion of our government in terms of responding in a real way to crises like this one. And they were extremely impressed at the fact that those restrictions could be removed so quickly and so effectively, so that Ukrainians coming here, and I remember having this conversation with Minister McAtee from the very beginning, merely had to say that they were coming from Ukraine. Driving licences, for example, were sufficient to establish where they were coming from. And that is the way it should be. It should be that way across Europe, but I know that it hasn't been. So I want to congratulate the government on that. I'm delighted to see that kind of measure now being put on a statutory footing in this bill, and that is very welcome. I think as well it's very important for us to put in place the other measures that you've talked about, for example, in relation to driving licences, as I mentioned, to make sure that people who are staying here longer term are in a position to stay here with the minimum possible bureaucratic fuss and obstruction to them. And I think that is something that is very, very important. And likewise in relation to the changes under the Department of Children, as much as to the transport provisions. So I know that this is an omnibus bill insofar as it puts a number of things together, but in terms of having a single statutory response, and I know that there are other particularly regulatory responses to it, I think it's very important for us to put on a statutory footing the acknowledgement of the importance of welcoming people into this community and facilitating them where possible. One glitch in that system, and notwithstanding the recommendation of the European Commission and the directive generally in relation to people seeking temporary protection, is the recognition and the mutual recognition of professional qualifications. It's something I've raised in this House before. Those coming here with professional qualifications, be it medical or engineering or legal or whatever it might be, I know that in lots of sectors they're having difficulty obtaining the status of their professional position in this country vis-à-vis where they might have been if they had stayed in Ukraine. And I think it's very important that we as a government also take steps to remind professional bodies that they must accommodate those people coming here. Now, the one that I'm perhaps most familiar with is that of lawyers, and I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with a number of Ukrainian lawyers who are working here, but none of them as a lawyer per se, some of them working in law firms but in a paralegal context. And the difficulty with that is not that they can't work, because all of these people have transferable skills that any employer in this jurisdiction would welcome, but it's that they are not recognised at the level they should be recognised at, and presumably are not being paid at that level either, cannot build clients at that level, cannot operate at that level. There will be other difficulties, obviously, for them in terms of language and systems and things like that. But the European Commission, and indeed our own government, has made it very clear that we should be recognised these qualifications. I'm using law as an example, but it applies equally to teachers and doctors and nurses and engineers, people who come here who have enormous professional expertise, who can contribute to this community in the same way that they did to theirs before they were forced to leave, and who want to contribute and want to be a functioning part of society. We should be doing everything we can to accommodate those people. And obviously there is selfishly also a benefit to us as well, because of course we need the benefit of professionals. We know there are shortages, particularly when we talk about nurses and doctors, for example. We know there are shortages of skills in those areas. So I would ask you, even though it's not something that's specifically addressed in this, even though it is already part of the law, that we would redouble our efforts in terms of making it clear to professional bodies particularly that they should be going out of their way to put in place structures to accommodate Ukrainian professionals who have to come here to make sure that they can work here in the same capacity and contribute at the same level that they are here. But as I say, on behalf of the Fine Gael Group, there is so much good in this bill, there is so much progressive and albeit technical stuff but it is stuff that has a real on-the-ground meaning for people who are coming here, and that's why I think it's very, very welcome. And whatever we can do to smooth that path for people as they come, and undoubtedly as we all hope, leave soon and return to their homes and return to their businesses and their livelihoods in Ukraine, we want to make that transition in and out, or to stay if that's what they want to do, as easy as possible. But I know, speaking to Ukrainian friends, that they are extremely anxious that they will in fact lose their populations to places like Ireland. The people who come here will find it easier to stay here. And while we would love that, there is obviously an imperative from the point of view of rebuilding Ukraine after the conflict that they may well, and I know the Ukrainian polity wants them to be part of that, and they may also want to be part of it. But I welcome these statutory effects in terms of smoothing the transition for anybody who has to come here. Thank you.